Model steam engines, top tip time, part 76. I work on miniature steam engines very frequently. If you are a Patreon supporter, you will get a notification that I've made a new video approximately 6 days per week, apart from yesterday. This was definitely an exception to the rule owing to the fact that the owner of the Stuart triple expansion engine that I've been repairing came to pick up the engine in the morning, and I normally edit the videos in the mornings. Effectively, this one's a day late, and it's showing some problems and fixes that you may find useful. I come across things like this very frequently. Later on, I show how to make the piston, cut the groove, fit the silicone O-ring, and then fit the piston and rod assembly into the cylinder. It's a simple job, unless you get it wrong.
The big end on this engine is very simple. It looks like a bush, which has a washer pressed or soldered to it. The small end of the connecting rod is the usual forked arrangement, and that fits across the crosshead like so. It has a pin that goes through the centre. Here's the pin. I'm going to test the amount of wear on these parts by passing a 1/4-inch reamer through them. There is a small amount of play in the fork end of the connecting rod, but there's quite a lot of play in the crosshead itself. This is the 1/4-inch pin that goes through the fork and the crosshead. It's supposed to be 1/4 inch in diameter. I'll check this later with the micrometer to confirm that. I'm now going to hit the crosshead with a hammer. I'm doing this for a reason. If you look closely at the crosshead, you will see there is a circular plug in the bearing. Now this is not a good thing. You can clearly see what's happened. This builder's been a bit careless, and you've already seen another example of this type of carelessness with the crank web and the crankshaft. But what is done here is drilled all the way through from the other end with a tapping size drill, then he's tapped it to fit the piston rod, but gone, oh dear, I've gone all the way through the bearing. I could of course make a new crosshead completely, but this is really defeating the object. This is a sympathetic rebuild, so I'm going to repair this one. I'm going to silver solder it, and I've done this kind of repair many times in the past, and it is very effective. The silver solder is harder than the parent metal anyway, and if nothing else it will hold the plug in place. Do not confuse this with soft soldering. This is not plumbing solder, and it's not electrical solder. This is silver solder, and the technical data is it's silver flow 55 using easy flow number 2 flux, because I've got lots of that. The easy flow flux is made up into a paste with some water. So after initially boiling off the water, I now apply the heat seriously to the part. And what I would normally do is wait until the flux took on a watery appearance, not like you see it now. When it becomes very runny, that's the time to apply the silver solder. But for the purposes of this demonstration, I'm going to put the solder in early. And what will happen, you'll see a nice ball of solder on the top of the work. Here it comes. And the reason the solder's gone into a ball like this is because the work is not hot enough. Watch what happens as I increase the heat. The ball collapses and the solder runs everywhere where I need it to be. For this repair I'm adding more silver solder than is necessary, far more silver solder than is necessary. But not only will the silver solder flow into the joint, it will reinforce the bearing. Once I turn off the gas blow lamp, you can see that the piece of metal is glowing red. So I won't be doing anything much with this until it's turned to black. Never quench a piece of work when it's bright red, always wait till it turns black. This will remove some of the oxidization, but not all of it. To thoroughly clean up the part, I need to drop it into my pickle bath. My pickle bath is a plastic dustbin half full of a mixture of water and some stuff called Kilrock K, which is formic acid. It's not as powerful as sulfuric acid. A micrometer check on the pin that goes through the crosshead tells me that it's 1.5 thou undersize, so I think I'll make a new one of those. The big end is a very good fit, so that will go as it is. While the crosshead is in the acid bath, I thought I would take this time to drill and tap for the grub screw to go down into the crankshaft from the crank web. This makes for a very secure fitting. It's not really necessary, but it's a real belt and braces approach. The grub screw now not only goes through the crank web, it goes tightly down into the crankshaft a part way. The original gunmetal piston's quite well made, but it's a rattle fit in the bore and it's designed for soft packings, I want to use a silicone O-ring like this one. The first thing to do is to check that the silicone O-ring fits in the bore. This is a 2-inch silicone O-ring, 2-inch OD, and it fits quite well in the bore. What I'm doing at the moment is selecting a piece of metal to make the piston from. This is some cast iron, some very close grained cast iron, obtained from the usual place that I get all my metal from. And I'm using the old piston and very crudely marking out the thickness. Simple and effective. It's not a precision piece, and when I start to machine it, I will machine much deeper than this, and then finally finish it using a micrometer. I have the piece of cast iron currently held in a 4-jaw self-centering chuck in the larger of my 2 lathes. I use this chuck a lot, I find it's really good. I'm reducing the outside diameter just over 2 inches because it's miles too big at the moment. And the reason for doing this in this lathe is because it's easier and it puts no stress on the piston rod. When I finally finish the piston, it will be mounted on the piston rod itself. So if I take most of the metal off, and if you watch here, you see I've gone past the line. The line is the exact size of the piston. I've gone past it about, I don't know, 1/8 of an inch maybe. I've speeded up the video now because otherwise it's going to just get really tedious. Cutting cast iron on a home lathe is quite a good thing to do. This stuff cuts beautifully. In reality, I have the lathe in back gear and it's running very slowly. I'm parting off the finished piston blank. I'm using a parting tool for this, and again the lathe is going really slowly. It is going nowhere near this speed. This cast iron stuff is quite hard. It's very free cutting, but one problem that I do have with it, occasionally some of the chips will get trapped between the sides of the tool and the work, and this will cause quite a noise. Or maybe a complete lock-up and break the parting tool if I'm over-ambitious. So once the groove is deep enough, I back off the tool and take a light cut down either side of the groove to let the chips go on their way. As this has been cut dry, and it's okay with cast iron because it's got a high carbon content, it does get hot. It would be great to flood it in coolant like you see on these big industrial machines, but I do believe that this industrial coolant is very nasty stuff. I'm going to use a centre drill to make a hole in the end of the work. This will be followed by a twist drill, which is a tapping size twist drill of 9/32 of an inch, to allow me to tap the hole 5/16 by 32 threads per inch. And here is that drill, 9/32 of an inch, which is 2 imperial sizes down from 5/16 of an inch. For ME threads and BA threads, this is what you generally do. You use a drill 2 imperial sizes down as a tapping size. For instance, if you wanted to tap a 1/4 by 40 hole in a piece of metal, you would use a 7/32 of an inch drill, which is 2 sizes down from 1/4. On the original piston, a percentage of the hole in the centre was drilled out to support the rod, so I'm doing the same. That way the piston rod will be exactly the same length as it was previously. As a precaution, just in case my thread is not good enough, I'm using some Loctite 638 on it. So this is not going to come off at all unless I heat it up with a blow lamp. I do notice that this Loctite 638 is a little bit more viscous than 601 or 603. I hope it's just as strong, and I'm sure it will be. Right, it's time now to fit the piston blank to the piston rod. It's worth remembering at this stage that the chuck has to be very tight on this rod. You do not want it to spin round. So here it goes. Yes, it feels very good, nice and snug. Now the edges of this piston are very sharp, the perfect right angles, so I'm using an old towel to grip the piston, and this way I can really tighten the piston blank onto the rod without the fear of cutting my hand and bleeding profusely all over the workshop. In this clip I'm checking the original size of the piston with the micrometer because I need to accurately finish the blank to be exactly the same thickness. I now need to take several light facing cuts across the front of the piston blank. Once the piston blank is cut to the final thickness, I then use a centre drill to make a hole in the end of the rod. And what I'm going to use this for is for a revolving centre to sit in, which will support the piston blank whilst I cut the groove for the O-ring. But before I cut the groove for the O-ring, I need to get the piston to the finished size. For this I've used a caliper and I've taken the measurement from the original piston. Because I'm using an O-ring, this piston actually needs to be slightly smaller than it would be if it was using soft packings. For the groove I'm using a small parting tool, and this is the main reason for having the piston supported by the live centre. This really would rattle and chatter if it was just supported on a 5/16 piston rod. If you are doing a job like this where you're fitting an O-ring to a piston, it's most important really to get the data from a Zeus book or some sort of book that gives you the O-ring's tolerances. I've done a lot of these, so I tend to busk it. All I can really say is the O-ring does not want to be nipped tightly in the groove. It needs a little bit of space to float about. So you can either look up the tolerances and specifications and get it precisely right, or you can busk it and you'll get it wrong probably a few times, but after a while the penny drops. Usual health and safety warning: be very careful when filing in the lathe, but it's good to remove the sharp edges, both on the inside of the groove and on the outside of the piston. The groove was thoroughly oiled before I fitted this O-ring, and there's some more oil going on the outside. This is steam oil. Do not use machine oil or motor oil on silicone piston rings, it makes them sticky. It's time now to assemble the piston with the lower cylinder cover and make sure it's central to the bore. Now I know it's going to be because, as I said earlier, the chuck on my old Boxford is quite accurate. If in doubt, use a set of collets. Buy yourself a collet chuck. Thankfully I don't need to buy another collet chuck, I've got one for the big lathe. And it's just a time-saving thing why I didn't use it, and it's a bit unfair saying, oh yeah, use a collet chuck. I think it cost me about £700 when I bought it.
With the piston moving up and down quite easily in the bore, that's the end of this episode. Stay safe, stay healthy, thanks for watching, and I hope you found it useful. Please take the time to visit my Mainsteam Models website and click on the section of the website that says Video Playlists. And by doing that, you can find other videos that you may like to watch. And by using the playlists, you can actually watch the videos back to back.